Everyone, this is part 2 of your tutorial in completing your Illustrator assignment, A Chair in Two-Point Perspective. In the first part video tutorial, we were this far. After you've established your guidelines on your top pasteboard, what you want to do is make a new layer, and you could just call it line drawing, and this will be the beginning of your actual drawing in Illustrator. You could lock the guides, turn the eye off. You can zoom in, Command plus, and just work on the top artboard. Might be too far. There we go. That'll probably work. All right. Now I'm not going to draw this entire chair. I'm just going to show a few features of the pen tool to get you started. And you will work with as much attention to detail and complexity to do a thorough job recreating this chair in Illustrator. Or your chair, I should say. All right. You'll need the photo on. You'll need to make sure you work on the line drawing layer. You can add as many layers as you need to work in line. You could add 2 or 3 layers. You can call it line 1, 2, 3, and then when all 3 are turned on, it would make the complete drawing. It's up to you. But you're going to want to make sure you have 100% black to begin with. Just line. Keep the fill turned off for now. And you'll want your pen tool, and we're going to talk about features of the pen tool. I don't think you want the pen tool that's a curve pen tool, curvature tool. That'll be handy for other kinds of assignments. Maybe it'll be handy right now for the curve on this chair, but basically you'll want to use that pen tool. All right. For now, I'm just going to keep a 2-point width stroke so you can clearly see what I'm drawing on this chair. What you're going to do is just start with your pen tool. I'll zoom in a hair. And maybe what I want to establish first is the front part of that chair. So to draw a straight line, I know you know how to use the pen tool already from your first assignment to draw a straight line. You can turn the layer on and off. You can turn the photo on and off and see how you're working. After you establish that first line, you can continue on and just draw a series of vertical lines perhaps. You will connect things, overlap lines. You're basically referencing the photo using clear attention to detail. That line's not in the right spot. Direct selection tool. Click the anchor point and get things to line up according to your photo. There. So these legs are a little wider at the top than they are at the bottom. I'm going to just zoom in and just draw a leg. Okay. Because this part of the chair is closer to my eye, I would want that line actually thicker than either line beside it. I'm going to use my shift tool. And this stroke, black is good. If I go to window, stroke, and keep the stroke palette handy, I can easily change with, and I'm going to turn the photo eye off. Okay? So what I'm establishing is this piece of the chair is a little closer and thicker than these 2 pieces. Okay? I'm going to move my stroke palette on top of my layers palette. I could move my layers palette over because I really don't need it right now. I could just set that right inside. All right. Turn the photo back on. Okay. You're trying to capture as much detail as possible. So I really want you to pay attention to what it is you see and think about the thickness of a line, how lines connect, and you can connect various anchor points as you draw. Maybe this whole side could be thicker than this whole side because that does move away from my eye. But you'll adjust thickness, connect and disconnect anchor points as necessary. And it really just takes time and practice. All right? So I'm trying to capture the three-dimensional quality of that leg. And this curve, well, let's just talk about that. The curve tool in Illustrator, okay, I have 2 anchor points. I'm moving my mouse and see how, as I add anchor points, okay, well that's a little unwieldy, it's a little close. I could use my direct selection tool and select the line I drew. When you click your mouse, you're establishing an anchor point, or if you're clicking your touchpad. If you use your direct selection tool, every curve is going to have some kind of handle that you drag and pull to get the nuance of how the curve needs to bend. Okay? So I'm just looking at that curve on the seat cushion. Try to follow it as best I can. If I use my direct selection tool, zoom in, I can move the anchor points, move the handles, and start to imitate the proportion of that curve. So each little section, do a little section at a time. Try to draw curves with as few anchor points as possible because you want the smoothness of the vector art. Too many anchor points makes like all these little nodes, and it makes your line quality look choppy. All right, so depending on how your chair is built, what curves there are, you could experiment with either one of your pen tools. I'm just going to show in this spot here a little demo again of that curvature tool. When you click and drag, escape, direct selection tool, click an anchor point, and the curve will have handles, and you can adjust that curve. And you can use the direct selection tool to move your anchor point. Okay? I'm going to hit delete because that was just a little demo. Here I'm trying to imitate that curve as best as I can, and at the edge of either anchor point you'll have 2 handles. Okay? And it becomes a little smoother, and I'm just going to scoot over. I'm going to use this pen tool now and just add to that. I'm going to hit escape. All right. Now what I want to explain here is that kind of straight line I just drew is a little too straight. With my pen tool, I can use the anchor point tool, click on an anchor point and drag, and create handles to create a curve as well. So I need to zoom in and out. I need to analyze and think about what I see in that photo and how to best replicate the chair. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out. So parts of the structure might be just straight lines. They're going to angle to match how the chair sits in space. Lines closer to your eye will be thicker. I'll get my stroke back out. Well, it was out. Oh, there it is. Great. I'll leave that there. And then lines farther away from my eye will be thinner. You can add width or subtract width as you work. You can come back and do it later. Every so often, don't forget to hit Command Save. And really think about how things overlap. For instance, I'm going to grab my pen tool. I'm going to draw this piece right here. That has a subtle curve to it. I'm going to come back and do that in a moment. Okay? I would want this line that's higher towards my eye thicker than any of these lines down here. So I'm going to click on that line, and I'm actually going to make it a 2-point thick. I'm going to come back to this line. I'm going to make that 2-point. I'm going to come back to this side. These are all connected together. And for now, I'm going to make them 3. I'm going to turn the photo off so you can see what's going on. Okay? You know, the cushion might be a little thinner, and I'm going to show you some things you can do to make thick and thin. This line's too thick at the moment, but I'm going to come back and change things. All right. Now I'm going to draw this line down here because I'm trying to emphasize in this demo making curves, changing line width, and making contrast. Thinking of contrast. I need contrast of line width, line quality to add space. Now I'll come back and connect my anchor points in a moment, and I'm just going to demonstrate with this leg. Okay, and right now I'm just dropping in the lines. Okay. All right, I drew 3 lines. They're not accurate. They don't have the curves that this piece of wood has. I'm going to just turn the photo off for a moment. See how that has no real spatial depth? It's just 3 kind of diagonal lines that are all the same thickness. Space will look flat if everything's the same thickness. All right. You're creating depth 2 ways: contrast and perspective. All right, I'm going to just zoom in. I'm going to focus on this leg for a moment. Okay, I'm going to click on that line. I want to make that little divot there. So what I can do when I draw, I can add an anchor point on a straight line. I can then take my Convert Anchor Point tool, and I can add a little bit of a curve. If I hold down my Shift key, I can keep one side of the curve straight. So within a line, you can add and subtract anchor points. You can use your Convert or your Anchor Point tool, right? And you can add curves. If you hold your Shift key, you can keep it straight. And I'm just trying to imitate that little divot, but not over exaggerate it. That might not be quite right. And eventually I'll link it and have it touch, but right now I want it a little free so I can move it around easily and explain to you my thinking and what I'm about to do. All right. All right, so I'm trying to think about what I see. I'm trying to think about, well, what does that leg do? If I turn off what I'm drawing and look, you know, I see this kind of curved wood. Okay. I also need it on this side. All right. So again, add an anchor point on either side of a curve. Whoops. Make sure you're clicking directly on the path. All right, so I've added anchor points. I'm going to zoom in. All right, so I drew a straight line, but I see that the chair has these gentle curves. And again, you can learn your keyboard commands when you use pull-down menus and work at your own pace. The more you're working, of course, the faster you'll go. Just trying to imitate and capture that divot a little bit better. Do the same thing here. I'm holding down my Shift key when I'm making a straight line, but let that divot be. And I'm clicking. Whoa, Command Z. I don't want it that pointy. But I'm also going to change the line thickness so some of that will go away. All right, I'm just going to leave that there for now. So what I'm going to do is just click away. I'm going to just select that line. I think the thickest line will be the top line. This will be thinner and that'll be thinner. So I think it needs to be pretty thin. I'm going to make it a half point. Same with that one. This one's way too thick for now. The top one, I don't need it 3. I'm gonna make it 3/4. I'm gonna turn my photo off. And the other thing I'm gonna do with this line is think about how it moves away from my eye. Okay, it moves away from my eye. It's the strut that holds the 2 legs together. So one thing I could do is in my stroke palette, show options, and I could think of that line profile down here. Okay? Whoa, I pulled out gradient. Sorry, we're not using that. Under a line profile, there are different ways that these widths will be applied to your line. Notice how this is very thin to thick to thin. And that is that shape for that line profile. Well, I don't really like that for that. Maybe I want it thicker to thinner. So thick to thin. Well, that might work. Because it's closer to the leg, it could be thicker. And it could go thinner. And maybe on all 3 of these, I could try the same line profile to go thick to thin. So stroke, show your options. If I hide the options, I don't have the extended window, but I could say show options. Okay. Now, I don't know if that's really how I'm going to keep it and really right. I'm going to turn my photo on. But I've established that this is much thicker and closer to my eye. I'm trying to visually establish through the movement of the line how the wood bends up and down. It's not just a straight line on that strut. I'm going to zoom in. Once I've played with these widths and thicknesses, I can connect it to the leg. I made this top a little thicker. I can use my direct selection tool, grab it, and pull the anchor point to meet that path. I can do the same with that one, and the same with that one. If I turn the photo off, deselect, you get the idea of what I'm doing here. Now, I really could be a lot more careful and not have these little points there and work a little more with these handles and smooth it out, because I don't want those little points, and I could reference back to the photo. Okay, I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to leave that stroke right there. I'm also going to go back to the curve that I made here and talk about line profiles. So in this line profile, I could also try thick to thin. I'm going to turn the photo off. So here it's thicker, and as it moves away from my eye, it's thinner. So fabric is going to have wrinkles, different kinds of cushions will have different kinds of curves. And if you zoom in to that line, there's another way you can finesse and control line width. And it's this tool right over here called Width Tool. Width Tool. You click on that and click on the line itself, and you'll see an anchor point added, and you pull slightly and you can create more width within the line. You can click in another spot and do it the same. So now this is thicker to thinner to my original line, and I'll zoom out. I'll turn that photo on, get the idea of the curve here. and turn it off. Zoom out. And I just click to deselect. Okay? So this is just my start. I'm experimenting. I'm thinking about the characteristics of the chair. I'm thinking about how the chair moves in space. You don't want this to become a shape that looks filled, and you don't want to have any little jagged anchor points. You want as much smoothness. Another thing about working with lines and endpoints, okay, this pointed edge and this edge, they look a little too sharp. So if I go back to my stroke palette, the end of a line, you can change its cap. Did you see right here next to the stroke palette? Okay, here's the anchor point. Here it looks very straight. If I want it to look a little smoother, a little rounder, well, maybe I can just do that. I'm going to deselect it so you can see. If I click on this line and I don't like it extended so much, you really have to zoom in and look at how things are connected. So this particular line, I'm just going to put it right there so you can see. It's a blunt end, or a butt cap. If I use a round edge, well, maybe I can change the character of the lines and where they intersect so I don't get these points. That might improve the look of my drawing. So here I have that anchor point selected, and this corner, so a miter joint would be very pointy. I could use a round corner, and see, now I've rounded that corner. Okay? So when the two lines were intersected, they make a corner, and I would have to click on that, and I can change its character. See, when I did this angle in the right, look here under stroke, and then it made it an angle. I think for this, I might like these rounded corners or caps. Now, one thing I also might want, these are all connected. I could come back to my line profile and think about thick to thin. Whoa, that's too crazy. This button here will flip, but I still don't like, oh, that's just not going to work for this at all. I could look down here and maybe try this one. I think that's too contrasty, too, I don't know, just too much. I also think it would need to be flipped. I'm going to zoom out, because I think it would be a tiny bit thinner here. This is actually where my eye is, but I'm not getting it the way I really like it. I'm not sure about that. I don't think this should be thicker than that. I think this should be reversed. But if I activate them, it's not letting me flip across. It's only flip along. So, could these outer edges work? Perhaps. Maybe. I'm going to turn the photo back on. Might leave it. I could come back and make a decision later. You don't have to make a firm decision in one spot. I think the best way to do it is just to start to lay in some lines and then come back. So I'm just going to grab the pen tool. I'm going to deselect. I think I have something on. I just want my normal pen tool. There we go. You know, I could build that line. I could build this line. I can come over here, build that line. I can turn the photo off, and I can start to see how I'm starting to build the chair in sections a little at a time. Then I would come in and zoom in, connect anchor points, adjust thickness and thin. I'm going to grab the pen tool and just talk about this cushion real fast by making a series of anchor points. I'm going to turn that off for a second. And, okay, these anchor points, I was making an anchor point on either side of a curve. All right, I'm going to turn the image on, and I'm going to scroll, and I'm going to grab anchor point tool. I'm going to look for those handles, and I'm going to adjust the curve to follow the photo. When you put an anchor point on either side of the curve, it gives you control to smooth it out. Remember, you need your selection tool, the white arrow, to move anchor points as you work. And at first, as you're learning, it's a little time consuming, but you get faster and more intuitive, and you could, again, use your curve pen tool as well. These are decisions you'll make as you work the file, but I need you to understand that when you draw in Illustrator, you don't just grab this pen tool, just deselect that, hang on, here we go. You don't just select the pen tool, click, 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 click. That's not how you draw. I'm just going to hit delete, delete. Okay? You want as few anchor points as possible to make a beautiful curve. You want an anchor point on either end of a straight line. The fewer anchor points, the smoother the vector. The vector art in general. Okay, the line. The line quality is critical. Also, you are gaining experience in controlling the pen tool. And precision with the pen tool will help you in making silhouettes in Photoshop, drawing other kinds of shapes, creating logos. This is just very basic. And you could oscillate between either of these pen tools and figure out what really is giving you the quality of line that you really need to draw the chair. All right? And once you get a line drawn, well, then you can start playing with thick and thin. So if I think of the cushion of the chair and how it moves towards my eye, well, one thing I could do if I zoom in right here is I can make this area slightly thicker by using the width tool. Click on the line and just pull a tiny bit, not too much. Now that I zoomed in, I want this anchor point right on the photo. There we go. I can pull that down. Some students find it a little less confusing to just draw the whole chair with a single width at first, and then go back and convert anchor points and change line widths. I'm going to go over here to stroke. Right now, this stroke is at 2. I think it'll work better as a 1-point rule. And I'm going to turn the photo off, and I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to deselect just by clicking in my artboard. And I'm starting to get some semblance of that chair. I would still come back and fix these or delete them and try again. This line to show depth, I could probably use thick to thin line profile, thick to thin, and that would work. Maybe I could experiment with that line as well, or I could keep it as a 1-point rule, but then this line, because it is higher, would be a 2-point rule. So to recap, using various tools to create thick and thin lines, you can always use your width tool. It's Shift plus W. Okay? Don't worry about any of these tools in here. We just want the width tool. And again, that width tool, and I'll zoom in, scroll over. You click on a very particular point of that line. It'll make an anchor point. And you just pull with your mouse or your touchpad. Don't do it too thick. You're not making shapes. You're making lines. And This is a 2-point width. Well, maybe I can change it to a 1-point width, and I'll deselect. But see how that's a little thicker here and a little thinner there. All right. You can play with your line profile and think about these different symbols and what they do. You can also flip them and experiment. Experiment. Hit Command Save often. Hit Command Save often. Make sure you keep a backup to your cloud account and on a portable hard disk or extra USB drive. You don't want to lose hours of work and miss deadlines. So be conscious of how you're saving files. All right, well, that's it for the pen tool in this particular line drawing. I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to call this negative shape. I'm going to say OK. All right, I'm going to zoom out. After you finish the line drawing or you want to take a break, lock it. And if you want to go on to your negative space drawing, that's on your second artboard below everything. You can leave the line drawing on. It won't matter because you're going to focus down here. Double check things are locked. I'm going to zoom in, scoot over. I'm going to turn the photo on. All right. Well, one thing we haven't really done yet is work with the fill. So for now, I could go to this button that was the default fill, and right now I don't want any stroke. I want a fill. Okay? And what I want for this fill, I'm going to hit cancel, is I want 100% black. Okay? It's also up here. Swatches, 100% K. K also represents black. And now I'm going to do the negative space drawing. Okay. What I want to do is just draw the space around the chair. And I can do this in a series of shapes. And if I click, whoop, pen, you need your pen tool. My mistake, I had the arrow tool. Click, click, click. I'm going to go along the edge of the chair. I'm going to come back. Remember an anchor point. You could come back and convert the anchor point to make the curve. I have a curve I'm going to need to follow. I'm going to come back to that. I got this leg. I'm just thinking I'm going to come back to that. When you make a shape, it has to be an enclosed path. You're drawing essentially a path around areas of negative space. You need to connect the two anchor points together that I did in that upper left-hand corner. And now this is one full shape. This shape is not finished because I need to put in the curves and make some adjustments to the anchor points. So I'm going to turn the photo back on, and I'm going to zoom in and scroll over to where I need to be. All right, I'm going to take my direct selection tool, make sure the shape is turned on. You'll notice the bounding box of the shape is the same color as this kind of light blue. Look here under layers. Okay, layers. I don't really need that color open. I'm going to close it, and I don't need the stroke open. All right. So then I'm going to do what I did with the line drawings. I'm going to have the anchor point tool. I'm going to click on an anchor point and just grab the handles and make the curves I need. Zoom in appropriately for your viewing and look at the edges of the chair. Look at the direction of the handles that you're pulling. You can also move the anchor point in closer to the chair. Okay, you're drawing only the space around the chair to be snug to the chair. Okay, direct selection tool always lets you grab the anchor point and tuck it in. Okay, that's the wood part of my chair. I'm going to just maybe tuck that in a little bit better. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to grab this anchor point and pull it to And I'm going to overlap shapes. I'm going to draw this shape next. Okay? And I'm just going to deselect. You're going to have a series of black shapes that overlap each other with no stroke. All right? I'm going to grab my pen tool, and I'm going to draw this edge. It's going to overlap that. I'm going to come over here. I'm drawing the inside, and if I'm going to fix that in 1 second. That has a little jog there. If it's too difficult to draw the shape as a fill, you can draw it as a path and then go back and fill it, and I'll show you that in one moment. So I'm really trying to get the edges of the chair, the little nooks, crannies, curves, to be accurate to the photo. I'm going to come back with my direct selection tool and move the anchor points appropriately to really be snug. And again, use the convert anchor point tool to make any of the curves I need. So remember, that's a tiny bit scalloped, probably not quite like how I have it right there. All right, I'm going to move that anchor point in a little bit to the leg, and I'm going to deselect it, and I'm going to zoom out a hair. All right, this is one shape underneath another shape. These two these two shapes, if I hold my shift key and select, you can see they overlap. That's okay. You don't want any white gaps, and you don't want any strokes. Now, what might be easier for you to see is to start with a stroke, no fill. Oops, Command Z. I had those activated. Command Z. Deactivate. All right. I want my fill turned off. I'm going to go to my default right here. That little shape right there. Look on the left where I'm circling. No fill, but I want a stroke. And I just want my pen tool. And what I'm going to show you with this little triangle here is I can draw a black stroke and follow the chair easier than usually working with a fill. All right, I can see everything. I can see I connected all the anchor points, and then I can go back, and when I clicked on the fill shape, it's asking me what I want to fill it with, and of course I want to fill it with 100% black. Okay, so you don't necessarily have to draw with the fill turned on. Sometimes it gets in the way and you can't see your subject. And you proceed through the drawing. I'm going to keep the fill off so you can see what I'm doing better. And by zooming in and zooming out, I'm going to need a curve there, I'm going to need a straight line there, and I'm going to need to connect them. I'm going to zoom in, and before I forget, I'm going to go back and make the curve that I need. And again, you can draw with the other pen, the curved pen tool, if that works for you. Okay? I only need the background shapes. I do not need the interior shapes. I don't want white, I want 100% black. And be careful if you draw with the stroke to make sure that stroke is also 100% black. You don't want any other color at all in your image. There. So the stroke here is also 100% black. All right. I'm going to zoom out, scoot over, zoom out a little bit more. And I think you get the right idea. I'm going to grab the pen tool. I'm going to turn the fill off. You have to bring it in front to do none. And then grab the stroke. And I'm just going to finish off this little tiny section. I'm going to overlap so I don't have any gaps. And you can begin and end where it makes sense to you. A good way to do this would be with as few shapes as possible. Zoom in and make corrections. After you connect and make your corrections for accuracy, you can add your fill and make sure it's 100% black. I'm going to zoom out. And I think you get the idea. And you'll find that this will go fairly fast. I'm going to do Command S for save. I'm going to put color away. I'm going to put the stroke away. I'm going to turn the photo off. Ah, error already. I need this to be a fill. My color picker, the zeros except for the K should be 100. That's another way you can change color. Or up here, look for the swatch to your left. Well, it's in my upper left-hand corner, and 100% K. This is your grayscale bar in your swatches. And deselect. Okay, so that looks okay. All right. What I'm going to move on to, no, I'm not going to draw the entire chair. I'm just going to leave it for our demo. I think I've shown you enough tools where you can roll up your sleeves and practice and get your chair drawn. Now, in conclusion, after you do both drawings and placed all the sketchbook images and you have your file totally built, it's time to make your PDF.